I have a lot of curiosity when it comes to trailers as a whole. And I think before we dive into the specificities of what makes a good podcast trailer, I want you to answer some of my objections.
Go for it.
I think that a lot of people put a lot of effort into the wrong things. And I would put podcast trailers as one of the wrong things to put the emphasis on when it comes to making a good podcast. Do you think that it's an essential piece or a creative piece?
This is where it gets really interesting, because there's a quote that we learned from Michael Bublé when he came onto our podcast, which was, if you steal from one person, you're a thief. If you steal from multiple people, you're an artist. And so that's no different to what the trailers for The Diary of a CEO have become. But even on a broader scale, it's been taken from the successful metrics from film, from TV, from theatre, from books. And so it ultimately comes down to the question of, what do humans want? And a lot of humans want intrigue. A lot of humans want the answers. A lot of humans want things put on a plate for them. And so what the trailer does is it offers a promise to people that for the next 2 hours of your very valuable time, this is what's going to be presented to you. Do you trust us enough that you're going to watch the full episode? And so for me, that's where it becomes essential. It's giving the audience an opportunity to say, this is what we're presenting to you. Do you want it? And in a world where people really struggle to make decisions unless it's handed to them on a platter, that's where the trailers really come into their own. I don't think the trailer as a whole is the wrong thing. I think the elements that go into the trailer is where people are going wrong a lot of the time.
Interesting. Something I did notice is that it's very different for people that are known versus people that are unknown. And sometimes in the case of people that are unknown, the trailer actually is a disservice when really you should just be jumping into the content. Do you know anything about that? Or do you think that if it's just a well-curated trailer, it can serve a purpose no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually part of the process of the trailer where we are analyzing who we think is, I guess, more recognizable in that first frame. Will it be Steve or will it be the guest? And so that's a question that we ask ourselves with every single trailer. And then the challenge then becomes, how can we make this person a character that people want to listen to? So how do we tell their story in such a short amount of time? How do we sell them? And again, it comes down to what's been successful in film.
I almost see a trailer as like the most artistic form of short form when it comes to podcasting, because it adds the most amount of depth. It usually requires the most amount of storytelling frameworks, and it requires the most amount of buy-in from a scroll perspective, which is why I think for a lot of people, like I noticed when I posted just short form, those clips would do great, but it's because they're optimized for that. Versus when I posted a trailer, like there was more conversion on people that would watch the long form, but it was obviously like much lower views because it wasn't meant for like virality. It was more so for nurturing conversion. Is this something that anyone that wants to do it at a serious level should be putting a lot of effort into?
I mean, if you're going to do it, you have to put a serious amount of effort into it. That goes without saying. And I think this is where sometimes where the problems come into it, which is people doing things because they feel like they have to do it and they do it to tick a box. If you do it to tick a box and you're not putting the care or the frameworks in or the elements that would make it successful because you're just trying to tick a box, then you are leaving yourself up for failure. We came into the industry, me and my ex-business partner, into the marketing world, video marketing, because we wanted to become feature film makers, and ultimately is, unless you had a lot of money or if you knew someone in the industry, you weren't getting in, especially with our backgrounds and especially being in the UK where there wasn't really as much of this thriving culture unless you had the money to go to a film school, for example. And so the only way we could scratch that itch was to go down the marketing video route. So the way we had to establish ourselves was to go to smaller businesses because they were the ones who could afford to pay what we needed at the time. Bigger companies wouldn't come to us because they had already established relationships with much larger productions. We didn't have the the experience yet to prove to those companies that you need to depart with this money. So we had to find a way, okay, how can we make things on smaller budgets, but still have the same impact? And where I find this parallel is so many businesses in the UK at that time, the only reason why they would agree to have video was because they felt it helps with SEO and it gets you on the first page of Google. That was the only reason. And that was a lot of the reason why they said yes. Now, the problem with that was when that's your decision, you then want it for the cheapest cost possible. It's not lit beautifully. It doesn't tell a story. And they're filming an awkward receptionist as they're doing their work and they don't want a camera in their face, but you need that for cutaways. And then it cuts to the managing director of the company who's doing his spiel, who's never been on camera before. And then they wonder why no one was watching that video.
Yeah.
It's because it's boring as fuck. And it's because it didn't tell a story. It's because it didn't raise attention. It didn't keep attention. It didn't keep them like emotionally involved.
Yeah.
And so where we came in was like, why don't we turn these into narrative stories? Why don't we sell the idea as opposed to sell the product? Why don't we sell characters as opposed to the service? And so what you end up doing is you're creating something that has been proven time and time again to engage with people, which is emotionally narrative storytelling. Like that's been proven time and time again to work, and that's what people engage with. People love human stories, for example. They love the highs, the lows, they love thrillers, they love horror, they love rom-coms. Bringing all of that in, and that's what's selling your service.
Who were you looking at when you started this to say this is a good formula for me to iterate off of?
God's honest truth. There wasn't.
Really?
In fact, part of the brief when I joined from Jack and Steve was like, I don't want you to watch any other podcast. And I didn't come from a podcasting world. I'd never watched a podcast before the Diary of a CEO.
Because you came from industry, TV, film.
I came from film and TV, and that's what I loved. I love documentary. Documentary is the thing that really gets me passionate.
Cinema in this format.
Yeah, cinema and storytelling. You know, from such a young age, all I would ever do was, because I had that second child syndrome, all I would either do is try and entertain my parents and battle for that attention, or I would go off and write short stories. And in school I struggled so much on academic subjects, but where I thrived was performance and trying to make people laugh or to try and make people cry and to again write scripts. That's what I'd done in my spare time, is that idea of storytelling. I loved watching Disney, I loved watching film whilst everyone else went off and played football when I was growing up. And so that's my background, is stories. And so when Steve said, I don't want you to look at any other podcasts, I don't want you to look at how they've promoted, we just want to do something different, what can you do? When I sat in the room watching Steve interview, who was it? I think it was Johnny Wilkinson. I was the first one who I watched, who's like an England rugby legend. And I was sat in that room, I was watching it, I was listening to the questions they were asking, I was looking at the emotion on Johnny's face, and it just felt like this is really deep, and this really connects on a human level. This felt cinematic to me. It felt like I was watching a live documentary in place. And so that's when I thought, okay, why don't we just turn this into something that people would love to see in a cinema? Why don't we turn it into something that people would gather around and sit on a sofa and watch it on a weekend? How can we entertain people in that way? Because we've got the stories. The guests that we bring on, we know the stories that they have. And especially some of the guests that we have, where it's like Jimmy Fallon or Kevin Hart or Michael Bublé, or even the experts that we have on, and like what they've managed to do in their field and the reason why they've managed to get there in their field. Their stories are incredible. How can we turn that into something that people really want to watch, where we take an audience on the journey of A to B, eventually to C, but in true dark fashion, we just cut off just before they reach C? How can we play to all those different emotions? Because naturally we want to show to the audience that this story has highs, it has lows, and you're going to connect with this person because every single day we go through highs and lows. No one goes throughout their life flatlined. when we first started, we were met with so much criticism and so much, why are you turning a podcast into a documentary?
Movie.
Yeah. Why are you turning it into a movie? What right do you have? And to be fair, when it first started, that would make me question it all the time of like, shit, maybe they're right. Like, maybe I need to stay in my lane. And then what was beautiful was we then started bringing in some guests that really said those cinematic lines and really hit hard. People like Michael Jordan's coach, and he was just talking like the way he landed his lines with such seriousness and so much oomph.
Yeah.
When people then started seeing that mixed with the music, mixed with the sound, mixed with the text that we've done, they were like, oh, okay, I'm feeling this now.
Before we keep going, I want to show you how much goes into making these podcast episodes. I am about to fly to New York to film more podcast episodes, and I'm bringing 6 cameras, 5 tripods, lighting gear, all the works. And then I'm going to find a production space. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to interview the guest for 3+ hours. And then I'm going to go into post-production where we edit the podcast that takes like 100+ hours. But if you're looking to get started in content, the new partner of the podcast makes all of that extremely easy. I'm now partnered with Riverside, who pretty much does all of that, but within your browser. You can send a link to your guest, and both of you can record 4K footage, no matter how bad the network connection is. And then you can edit that footage within the tool itself, and you don't need any editing experience prior. Then it creates magic clips for you, which are like medium form clips and short form clips. And you can host it and distribute it across all platforms, which is what I use it for. If you're just getting started in making content, or you want to take things to the next level, Riverside is the tool that I recommend the most. So go to riverside.com and use code GRANT and you'll get 1 month of the Grow offer. I'm so grateful to have Riverside as a partner because they help me make all of this happen. So thank you so much. Now let's get back to the episode.
What's the highest retention you remember having on a trailer?
On socials?
No, I think on the long form. In terms of people that are maintaining throughout, like, I think, the average person's probably getting around 40 to 50% after a minute. Mr. Beast is optimizing for as high of a percentage as possible. What's the highest percentage? This is like very tactical that only people that make YouTube videos would actually like look at these graphs. But my guess is a lot of people that are doing that are watching this video.
Hope so.
What percentage after 2 minutes is like the thing you could flex the most?
The highest?
Yeah.
And we've had it in like 60s and things like that before.
That's crazy.
Like
podcasts in the high 60s.
Yeah. Especially with Near the Sign, depending on the guest. And I think this is where it gets interesting, right? Because there's so many factors that can go into that. When you have a guest like a Jimmy Fallon,
who's never really done a podcast format, right?
Who's never done a podcast format. When you get people talking about exclusives, or when certain topics are going to bang because we've done the research into it and we know that's what people are searching for.
Yeah.
That's what helps. And then my job literally comes like, how do we justify that? How can we like push people a little bit further to be like, okay, this is going to be worth your while.
Yeah.
What's interesting, and then when YouTube started doing like the second that you scroll over a footage and it starts playing, then you started seeing that huge drop off from the offset because people are just scrolling through and it starts automatically playing. So like literally they're there for like half a second. I always wonder, and at the start I always wondered what that was because I was like, you're not even giving this half a fucking second. What can I do in half a second to do it? And then I was like, no, it's because they're literally just scrolling through and now that counts as like with the drop off points. But yeah, there's just so many factors that go into it. And like my job is literally to bring as many of those together as possible. Like I think Louis Tomlinson, who was part of One Direction, he had a huge retention because it was also like one of the first times he'd gone out and spoken about this. And
it was a cultural moment.
And so that helps so much. And then when we have a fitness expert on, that's where we really lean in more to data of like what people are searching for. What are the most watched clips on socials that this guest has done before? And what are the topics that are most watched? And so then if I can cram as many of those topics in within the narrative, then you're piquing that interest. And so if you do something like about Ozempic, people click on it and people watching it and people are really interested in the Ozempic, for example. If you then combine that with creatine, if you then combine that with other supplements, if you then combine that with longevity.
This actually plays into something I want to ask about, because I think, one thing is there's an art form to what you do, and there's like the fact that you do it better than anyone else in the world is not really up for debate. I guess before we dive into a specific, we have a bunch of videos we'll dive into, and I want to talk about the frameworks, so anyone that's watching knows we're going to be diving into frameworks and specifics. But what would you say, in your opinion, is actually the main driver of a good podcast, holistically and just in terms of a specific episode? If you could say, like, these are the things that are actually matter. Say trailer is one of them, but like, what is the other aspects of things that actually matter?
I do think the thing that most matters to me is, I'd say, like, the open-mindedness and curiosity, and the idea that what podcasts do so well is it allows people to speak. I think that's what's been the natural gravitational pull for people for podcasts. Is like, if you look at most celebrities, when they go on and they're promoting a film or promoting a book, they might get 5 minutes on a TV show, and they can't really go into much depth. They can't really talk about anything. One thing that a podcast does do well for celebrity names, that does well for experts, is it allows them a platform to not only say what they're doing, but then express that further and to fully open up and to talk about that. And I think that's a huge part with podcasting, and that's a huge part of why people subscribe and want to watch these things, because they're getting insights into a world that they only ever get snippets to.
Let me get more specific. If you could say in percentages, as like a factor, audio quality a factor, packaging being a factor, and trailers being a factor, guests and topic, what would you say if you broke it down into like 100% of importance? What percentages carry the most amount of weight? Is guest like 50% of how good a podcast is?
Yeah, let's go with 50.
Okay.
Ultimately, it does come down to the guest. I think it's, you can only fool someone for so long, right? If you've got a guest who doesn't know what they're talking about, if you've got a big name whose story isn't that inspirational, who hasn't gone through the highs and the lows, you're probably going to start fooling the audience pretty soon after about 20 minutes when you've still got another 2 hours to go into this stuff, right? So yeah, guest is 50% easily. And again, we know that even from with the trailers, in terms of retention and click-through rate with the trailers, and when we promote the trailers, is if we have a big name on there, instantly views skyrocket, instantly the retention's longer, and it's because people want to know those celebrities like they've never known before. And so when you then are not focusing on a celebrity with a big name, for example, and you've just got a guest talking about certain topics, that 50% is even more important, because you're not relying on the name or the face, right? And so it's, how do you sell that guest? So then it starts with the guest, 50%. 10% would probably be through the trailer, because again, going into those guests who you don't know who they are, how do you sell that guest to, again, it's like we're asking people to spend 2 hours of their time doing this, right? And so how can we give you that promise that it's worth your time, even though you've never heard this person? How is this person going to change your life that you never met? And so, and even when you have the big names guests, again, it's still like, we need to offer you something that you think that you've never heard about this person, that you don't know about this person, what's going on behind the makeup or the facade, right? And so that's why I'd say trailers extremely important. I would go for the 10% there. Audio, video quality, another 10%.
You think audio and video is as important as the trailer?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Because like they all have to feed in with each other, right?
I would almost say, because I think of each one of these other categories, I think every single one of these categories is a moat. And so, like, for example, there's some people that are going to be able to get better guests than other people, right? Whatever their topic is, whatever their subject is. There's some people that are going to get better video quality based on their access to stuff. There's people that are going to get better audio
but I feel like
quality.
These days it's easier, a lot easier to get high quality video,
so
for
it's not
example.
that no longer is audio and video a moat. It has to be something deeper.
Yeah. I think it's almost like the bare minimum, in my opinion. And I think it's
Dire CEO standards. I think that's what it is. I think you're insane.
But it's like, even here, you've got 1, 2, 3, you've got 5.
Yeah, we're not doing a 7.
Cameras.
I'm not doing a 7 one,
Are you shooting them 1080 or 4K?
4K, yeah.
4K?
Yeah.
High quality?
Yeah.
So instantly, why did you made that active decision, right?
Yeah.
You didn't test it out with an iPhone and one iPhone on a tripod.
No.
You was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I
have to do it the best.
I have to do it, right? It's some of these things are called non-negotiables, right? And we'll go into this when we go into the trailers. I literally have a checklist where it's the non-negotiables every single trailer has to check. And so for me, it is a non-negotiable. If you want a podcast that you want to grow, that you want it to do well, you have to invest in those stuff. You need high quality audio. It's still a podcast. People are still listening to this. You still got to remember, people are going to be listening to this on their run, or when they're at the gym, or when they're at work, when they're listening to Spotify. Not everyone's going to listen to it or watch it on YouTube. So you want to tick that box as well. But even when you're watching it on YouTube, when you have like annoying audio, it grates on you. So it's low on a percentage, because all of these things are, if you want to be successful, you need to invest into all of these things, right?
50% guests, 10% trailer, 10% audio, 10% video, or just 10% audio and video?
10% video and audio. 15% to 20% title and thumbnail.
Title and thumbnail. Okay.
I think it's, Mr. Beast has spoken about this so much, right? It's such a game changer. We've noticed it when we've changed the title and a thumbnail, where you could have it suddenly just peak up, even when you change a video that we released about 1.5 years, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think enough people spend time on that. I think a lot of people understand it's important when, like, subjectively, and like when you say it off the cuff, it's like, well, obviously it's important. Yeah, obviously a title's important. Like, it's going to tell you. But I think I know the answer to what this title is.
The packaging being more important than the video and the audio is crazy to me. But you're right, because if I can't get someone to click on it, then that's...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's the first thing you see, right? When you scroll through, that's the first thing you see is the thumbnail.
Yeah.
And even on Spotify, we do like with thumbnails for that now. And so I think that's arguably, I would say about 20%, and that's where we're now on 90%.
Yeah.
90%. So the last 10%, the host. And ultimately,
I was going to be worried if you didn't leave anything for the host. I was going to say, like, if you're like 5 years, I was like, that's important.
Yeah. Do you know what this reminds me of? Is this new trend that's been going around where it's like they're getting, like, Ricky Gervais, for example, to rank his favorite shows without knowing what's coming up next.
Yeah.
I feel a bit like that, where it's like, I know there's going to be something like you might say in a minute. I'm like, fuck,
no, yeah,
that's the 10%, but I'm knocking 10% off the guess.
10% host makes sense though, because it can break or break the
exactly.
Quality
And like what Steve has done incredibly well is the simplest thing ever you would think on paper, which is he sat down and he listened. And then you sort of realize people really struggle with that. You have people who want to always put their ideas in. You want people who always want to impart their wisdom, for example, even though the person that sat opposite them has got like the PhD in that subject, they want to impart their wisdom as well. If you've got a guest opposite you who's taken their time to talk about either their life or talk about a topic or the subject that they're a master in, let them say it. Let them talk. It doesn't mean you can't rebuttal. It doesn't mean you can't ask more questions. It doesn't mean you can't put your point of view across in some instances, but don't make it about you. Make it about the guest. This is essentially, it's their show for this episode. It's them. It's they're in the limelight. Let them do that. And that's what Steve does really well. And so that's why I think the guest is so important. And I don't think people realize that. They think anyone can be a guest. They think anyone can just sit here and ask the questions. And you find some hosts where they already know what they want to ask. So it doesn't matter what answer you give. The next question is set in stone. And from a guest perspective, that throws you off a little bit, right? Because you start thinking didn't listen to me on that last bit. They're thinking about the next question because they know they want to tick this box of like, I need to go through these questions. Steve never has any questions like written down. He reads the brief.
Really?
Yeah. He reads the brief. He makes notes. He jots down his notes.
He doesn't have any, like, I've got questions on my, so like, you're saying he's not looking at anything saying.
No. So the guest research team do an incredible job researching everything Steve would need to know. And that comes down to most watch moments. That comes down to their family history. That comes down to where they went to school. It comes down to their favorite music, anything, like any props or mementos that they can put on the table, for example. And Steve will read all of that, digest it. I actually don't know how he does it because he does it in such a record time as well, because he's so busy and he's got so much going on. And then he just comes in with his iPad and he's got his notes on there, and he's got things there that interests him and he knows he wants to talk about it, but he's not waiting to ask that question. He knows it will come up. And so he literally starts off with a question of, say, tell me, like, for anyone's listening right now, what are they going to get out of this, or what is his the biggest thing context?
Is like when he started talking, they started like, what's the context that would help me understand who you are as a person.
And from that moment, it's just a conversation, and it can go anywhere. And that's what, from a trailer editor, sometimes I find really, really agonizing, because it's like, I would love to know what the structure is. I'd love to know how I'm going to make this before the guest even sits down, but you just can't. And what you end up as a result of that is a more authentic, genuine conversation that's driven by curiosity. And Steve is one of the most curious people I know. And I think that's why it's worked so well. And so that's why the host is so important.
What's a red flag if you see it? If someone's posting a trailer, if they're posting a podcast with a trailer, what's like a red flag of like, this is really awful. Anytime I see this is just like, please do not do this.
A red flag for me is, so I'm going to change around the terminology here. So I think the red flag for me is sometimes framework. What I've sort of instilled with my editors is the idea of a guideline. So I use those words very, very carefully and differently, because in my mind, a framework is you do it the exact same way every time. You do this, and then it goes to this, and then you go to this. And some people are so focused on the framework, they will never branch out of it. And it doesn't matter what it is. The difference with guidelines is guidelines are literally just there to help you when you need it. And so for me, I think the biggest problem people face, a red flag for me, is when I can spot it and be like, you've just focused on a framework that's been posted somewhere, which in my eyes is basically that top level of an iceberg, the iceberg that's above the surface, and you've completely neglected the iceberg underneath. And so that for me is a red flag, and I think that stands out a lot.
Give me an example.
So in their eyes, they see, okay, a hook. Obviously, a hook needs to hook people in. It's a key driver for retention. It's also going to potentially showcase what this entire episode is about, right? A lot of people might see the hook as purely as grab attention. And that's one element of a hook, is because you need to grab the attention, right? It does have a job. That's what it's got to do. But it cannot be at the expense of not only the rest of the trailer, but at the expense of the entire episode. And so, because again, it's treating people like idiots, and people find that out. You know,
are you saying you should not treat people like idiots?
Just don't treat people like idiots.
Really?
Yeah.
I always think about like, how do you combat that with the perspective of like earn the view? Because I have to give them a reason to watch. And if I make my thing too sophisticated or require too much context.
So that's different. That's spoon feeding. I think you do need to spoon feed. And I think, and look, spoon feeding, I don't like the term spoon feeding, because it's sort, in the past, it feels like if you're spoon feeding something, it's because they're an idiot and they can't understand it, right? But that's not the case. The case is okay, I assume every single audience member needs, like, I don't know, like such a damning statement because that's the only thing that they're interested in.
Mhm.
And it's got nothing to do with the rest of the flow of the episode. They might just say one thing, or we're going to create it in a way because we know that's going to get the clicks.
It's like someone saying like the word like narcissist or gaslight. They talk about something completely different.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're just going to put this in the very forefront because that's the most algorithmically triggering word that we can find.
Exactly. And what you then find is like, even throughout the rest of the trailer, it sort of leans into something different because that's just that one particular moment. And so where you need to be smart and just where you need to treat your audience with respect is ultimately everything that we do. We try to treat our audience with the utmost respect. And so spoon feed and tease into that in a way, because it's not like we don't think you're smart enough to understand this. What we're saying is we're going to try and make this in its simplest terms so you get it like that and that you understand it. Everyone wants something said in their simplest terms. No one really goes out and be like, explain this to me in the most difficult way so I have to spend 20 minutes trying to figure out what it is. No one says that. But what we're not saying is you're not dumb, but what we're saying is that we're just going to try and make this as easy as possible so it digests quickly. And a good example for this is Jefferson Fisher. When we had Jefferson Fisher come on again, we know the buzzwords that gets clicks, and usually it is words like gaslighting, liars,
in communication.
narcissistic. We know that happens. So as an editor and as a marketer, we know that has to be included in some way. How do we include it in a way that's smart, that's thought about, that's cared about, and also backed by the data? Now, the way we do it is, okay, with Jefferson Fisher here, we're gonna tee it up and we're gonna make it a moment of value. So a moment of value is one of the elements on my checklist that we have to tick. And a moment of value is like, we're gonna give you this information for free as a goodwill gesture. If you come and watch the rest of the episode, you're going to learn so much more. But because we're so confident in that, here's something for free. And I sort of got it from what supermarkets used to do years ago. They used to do something called a loss leader, where they would have like baskets of fruit. And so when you would walk around the supermarket, you could grab a banana and you could eat a banana as you're walking around, and you're more likely to spend more money whilst you're doing that. It's the same reason why they give out bread in a restaurant. And the idea is like, it's almost like you create a bit of trust with the brand. It's like, oh, you're giving me this? Okay, there's a little bit of a guilt complex here. Maybe I should spend a little bit more.
Reciprocity. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what we've done with Jefferson was we knew we needed to get those topics in, and we needed to get them in fast. But we're not just going to come out and have Jefferson be like, gaslight.
Yeah.
Because that's not him.
Yeah.
He's such a smooth talker. And like, we want to do him justice in a sense of like, this guy's an expert. He knows what he's talking about. So when we put it in the style of a moment of value, it's like, this is something that I call bestie bombing. And he goes on to explain bestie bombing. We know there's so many people out there.
I just put out that video yesterday, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I literally, I just put it out yesterday. It popped off. Yeah. That's so funny that like that was our...
That's our connection. So it's like loads of people will relate to it.
Yeah.
But what we allow him to do is explain that moment. And so the hook is actually, in a sense of pace, it's actually a lot slower than what you would sort of suggest in the terms of gaslighting and narcissism. And those are key words that we've not mentioned yet. So then how do we find the bridge and the flow to then go into that? Okay, so we're going to establish that we're going to talk about this. And so what we essentially do with the hook is almost like, we're not saying it for clicks. We're saying it because we genuinely think that this will be of interest to you, and we genuinely think you can learn something from this, and we genuinely think that this could potentially change your life if you just give us 2 hours of your time. And that's what I mean by the respect. It's interesting because I get asked a lot about, how do you go viral? How do you make these trailers to go viral? How do you do the attention grabbing and all this sort of thing? And what's really weird is I don't set out in that way. It's I set out with the idea of value first, or story first, or emotion first. And Jefferson is a fantastic example of that. The smooth talker, we allowed him to explain his point. We didn't try and get gaslight in the first word. We allowed him to sort of grow into it because it's that trust that we want to give the audience. And it's sort of like subtle hacking, right? We know that when we start with Louis Tomlinson, which I've actually got here. Should I play it now?
Yeah, let's play that. Let's watch this.
Not really ever spoke about it in depth like this. Nothing prepares you in life for those kind of situations. But I felt like I'd failed at the time. That's the truth. And it's still something that I'm unpacking still, to be honest.
Louis, we spoke to your sister, Lottie, about this. Would you like to see it?
Louis Tomlinson!
I didn't spend...
So that moment there is, how long's that hook? That is 20 seconds.
Dang. Yeah, I was there. I was, that was, and what you did there, because it wasn't like he, I want you to break it down. It wasn't like he was communicating anything dramatic. It wasn't like he was saying anything shocking. You could tell that this was going to be about something very emotional, very cinematic, very deep, and he was going to confront something or expose something, but you had no idea whether that thing was like tribally negative or like gossipy.
Exactly.
It was purely like storytelling from a relational perspective. You're like empathizing with where he was at emotionally.
100%. That hook, we covered so many bases on that, just on that hook. So first thing, it sort of goes against what genuinely people would say you have to do to hook people in. Usually it's high-powered energy, it's strong statements, which we do. Which
is probably important when you have someone that's less well known.
Yes.
In comparison
exactly.
to Louis. Yeah.
And so for someone like Louis, we used more, I guess it's looking at things from tiny little details. So the first thing you hear from him is, I've not really ever spoke about it in depth like this. So straight away, the first thing he says after a little bit of a pause is something that we're going to hear for the first time ever.
Okay.
That in itself is to create that intrigue. Ultimately, that's the first line you hear is, this is an exclusive. Now, we could have gone down that with high energy. We could have gone down with that with like a bit of a rock, or I guess because he's One Direction, sort of like
and in this case, when it's a music artist, are you allowed to use their music? Is that a permission thing or no? Are you?
Yeah, so you can talk, like you talk to their PRs and their management, and they can give you X amount. For example, when we had Alex Honnold, that's actually a very good example of how we created B-roll and a style, so we wouldn't get in trouble. But he also allowed us permission to use certain elements of it.
Yeah,
and so. With him, we could have gone high octane energy, but instead we went for this slow approach because, okay, that in itself creates intrigue. This is something that's clearly bothering him. And the second point is, these are quite vague. They're vague but specific. So these are, people might hate me for this, but this is, I learned this from horoscopes. Horoscopes are fantastic at doing this, where they make something feel so specific to you, but if you take a step back and read it,
it's accessible to everybody.
It's accessible to everyone. And I tick the box of every single freaking horoscope for that year. So I'm in Aries, and I'll read Aries, and like my editors and stuff will tell me that that's so you. And then sometimes I'll be like Gemini, and they'll go, that's so you. I was like, oh, that's Gemini, that's not really. And it's like it's way to making things broad but specific. So what we wanted to do here is, people who are going to watch this, a lot of people are going to be One Direction fans, so they'll know about Louis' life, and so they'll know about those key moments. What we purposely done was not reveal what the moment was, because then that allows the audience to decide what it's going to be.
And even here, as you're showing it, like you're intentionally blurring as a means of adding the cinematic aspect of what's being revealed. So like you're blurring him in the process of like revealing truth. Yeah. Is that an intentional edit decision? Is that natural? Like what happens there? Is there a ton of thought that goes into that?
Yeah, so it's something I called the perfect imperfection. And this is, you can see it on, a great example of it was when they do things like with Django, or a lot of sitcoms do this, where they'll cut in on a camera. And it's basically a way of mimicking real life faults in the world within the process, so it feels more raw and authentic. So the idea of doing a little bit of a focus pull is almost like the camera's made a mistake here. And the reason why we do that is because subconsciously in the mind, you sort of feel like this is more real. We've not made this perfect. And by doing that, you sort of make the perfect imperfection.
Wow.
And one of my favorite moments is from the latest Fantastic Four with Johnny when he goes flame on and they added like camera dust marks and lens flares and they made the camera look really dirty. Obviously the camera's not really dirty. This is a Hollywood film. There's someone who literally cleans the lens every single time, and it's also CGI. He's not burning into flames. So they've done that on purpose because subconsciously as an audience member you're like, oh shit, I'm actually there.
It's dirtier.
It's dirty. It feels raw. It feels authentic. It's almost like we weren't prepared for this guy to open up. So again, that's a perfect imperfection. We use a lot of them in different styles. Steve's reactions a lot of the time is a perfect imperfection. They've been purposely chosen. They're not always from when the guest is saying it, for example. And so with that we use very vague moments. So some people might think that he's talking about personal, some people might think he's talking about managers, some people might think he's talking about the band members. And essentially what that does is that allows people to go, we're not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to watch the full episode to know if that itch has been scratched, right? And then the final bit into that, again, we do a little bit
the reveal,
focus pull of his sister, and it sort of adds again to that exclusivity moment of it. So we spoke to your sister, and just by showing it, we know that she sat there.
So that's a payoff. That's a curiosity gap that you're creating.
That's a payoff. And we've done it similar with Mike Dowd, except for Mike Dowd, who's known as New York's dirtiest cop. But instead for him, we pull it at the end because his story was so nuts, and he's also a bit of an unknown. His story was so nuts, we needed to get that across soon. And then when it has this huge moment that he's corrupt, he's almost like becoming like this millionaire corrupt cop, and then it all comes tumbling down, and now we're left with what's going to happen next. And then that's when we slowly fade into his mother walking towards the chair, and then she sits down and she's frail, she can't really move, so we kept that shot in of her walking in because we wanted to show it's almost like the heaviness of this moment is on her. And so we revealed that at the end of like, we spoke to your mother, do you want to hear what they say? Because for the whole trailer it's like, we've heard your perspective, now we're going to hear how it affected the people that you loved. So they're like the similar moments but using two completely different ways, and at the start and at the end. With this is because we wanted to go with the exclusivity moment. For Mike Dowd, we wanted to go down the road of like, there's something more here. This is not just your story, this is a story of your family.
What would make more sense? Would it make more sense for you to break down the entirety of this trailer, or would it make sense for us to go through other trailers and connect the dots on this as well?
I think maybe going through a few different ones, because I think ultimately what you sort of get a sense here is like this checklist that we go through, and why I call them guides, because a lot of the time, a lot of people would follow the framework.
I don't mean to break you off, but like, can you summarize how long is this checklist?
It's 15 points.
15
and
points.
Some of them have their own sub points.
Are you going to, in this podcast, are you keeping that proprietary, or are you actually going to tell us every single thing that you have in these guidelines?
I'm going to reveal all that I can.
Okay.
I'm going to reveal everything that I can.
Okay.
But the ones I'm going to reveal are they're the elements that anyone can implement straight away into their work. And this isn't just trailers. This is for long form. This is for social content. The tips that I'm going to give from that checklist, they're the ones that you can do on your next video. And you don't have to go through film school, or you don't have to read psychology books to achieve these particular checklist moments.
So far, what of this checklist has been applied? What have we seen so far? If we're saying, if I'm saying from this basis point of like, this is the checklist, this is it, this is the package in the video, right? What are you about to reveal as we show the beginnings of these individual trailers?
So with this one, it's all about the hook. So checklist 1 is the hook, which does it play to the amygdala. And so the amygdala is what subconsciously goes on in your brain, which is driving you to make decisions. Ultimately, the goal of every single trailer is to make you want to watch the full piece. So how do we do that? And that all starts with the hook. And again, paying that respect to the audience in the process of doing that, which is also in itself one of the checklist items, is paying respect. Paying respect to the audience and paying respect to the guest. Now, we could have gone high octane for this. We could have taken things a little bit more out of context, for example. We could have made it more harsh, grabby, and I guess playing to the ADHD in me, which is like thumb, stop and scroll. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted it to flesh out. That's the respect to the guest. Ultimately, when I go through a checklist, justification is arguably one of my most important points on the checklist. And it's also one of those things that every single content creator, editor, podcaster can implement into their next work straight away. And it's because it's a mind shift. It's a shift of the mind. It's focusing on the details, and it's realizing that every single element of your trailer has to be justified. If it's in there because it looks cool, if it's in there but you can't explain what it is, get rid of it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk that you're going to take the audience member out of this world. It's not worth the risk or the damage that you potentially could do to the long form episode. And ultimately, if you can justify it, it means it's there for a purpose. And so maybe one for this, which could be a good one, is, let's go to Oz Perlman. Now, Oz Perlman is very much in a very different style of hook and trailer, but I'll play his hook because I actually loved bringing this one to life. And this tees very much into justification and intrigue.
I've spent 3 decades reverse engineering the human mind to show you how you can use it, to know what somebody's thinking when they meet you, or if somebody was telling you the truth or lying. So let's do something fun. Imagine that in front of you was an invisible deck of cards. Spread them out in front of you. And I want you to reach down and imagine you just grab a card at random. Now, look at it. Look at me. Okay, close your eyes. Hold your hand out, please. Now, before you open your eyes, tell us, what was that card?
3 of diamonds.
Open your eyes. Take a look. And it's not magic. I can teach you this. And these secrets, these habits, they're applicable all throughout life. So trust me, you don't want to miss the rest of this.
Like, I always smile with it. That's a 41-second hook. That by industry standards, a lot of people are like, your hook should be about 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah, in fact, most people think the whole trailer should be about 35 to 45 seconds.
Yeah, and this that's 41 seconds in itself. It didn't feel like 41 seconds when I was watching it. And what you do is you actually achieve so much from that. You establish who he is.
Yeah.
He's known for doing magic. That's what he's fit. So we know that we're going to get magic tricks from this. That's instantly fun. B, again, opening line. I've spent 3 decades reverse engineering the human mind. 3 decades, 30 years. This guy knows what he's talking about because everyone's
and that creates the bullshit barometer goes up on people of like, okay, is this guy actually real or not? Is this actually a legitimate claim? And then immediately you have to close that gap of saying, why is this person legitimate?
Yes, exactly. It's we used to do it through the intro cards, but now we actually try and bring it into like the hook themselves. Yeah. And so that comes down to sometimes the words that you'll say and
his reaction on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you not feel the intrigue from that? A lot of the time...
Is that getting taken from a different context?
That's taken from a different moment. But it's the thing that relates to here is, again, a lot of what I do has been taken from so many different industries. So this in particular is taken from the idea of the laughter track. And so have you ever watched a sitcom with and without a laughter track?
The same show?
The exact same show, exact same episode with and without a laughter track. I have. And I laugh significantly less when there wasn't a laughter track.
Interesting.
And that's a psychological hack that they brought in. And one of the best examples of that is a British show called Only Fools and Horses, which for most of its run had a laughter track. And it's considered one of the best British sitcoms in history. It was either the last season or the last couple of seasons, they actually got rid of it. Not that funny. It's not as funny at all. And I've done it with Friends, and I love Friends. Friends without a laughter track isn't that funny. And it's because it almost allows you, it gives you permission to laugh when other people are laughing. And so Steve being shocked by it allows you to be shocked by it. And an example that I have is when we had the Orgasm Queen up. And she was basically talking about the different types of orgasms.
You have an example?
I can find that
let's
one.
pull it, yeah.
Nobody even knows there's over 20 kinds of orgasms that you can have. There's that's a one and done. But then there's That's the queen of orgasms. And to achieve that, there are very specific techniques that work, and it's not what you see on porn.
First off, what a guest.
Amazing guest.
That's an incredible guest. And the commitment she has to doing that.
I know. She was amazing. She literally came in with like 2 suitcases full of sex toys. And we had to blur them all because of monetization and everything like that. But
and you guys you said porn in the intro of it. Is that not allowed? Like I thought there's communication like you're not allowed to use that.
Didn't get demonetized for that.
Crazy.
It got demonetized at one point because of because sometimes we upload it before on a private link to see if it flags anything, and it was because of the sex toys, but it didn't mention that, which is interesting, right? Yeah. And it's like I don't know whether it's because of music at that time. You don't.
Yeah, and you also made a choice. I want to ask you about this. You made a choice to intentionally not censor it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even from a text perspective, it's like there's a cultural expectation to censor curse words, like. People almost expect an asterisk rather than seeing like F-U-C-K. They're expecting the F-U.
We do asterisk swear words.
Yeah.
Because for 2 reasons. One is to play it safe.
Yeah.
We'd be gutted if that's the reason why a YouTube gets demonetized because of it. And B, because it adds a little bit of grit and it's this weird psychology moment that it does, where it does something to your brain where it actually makes it feel ruder.
Yeah.
And more harsh because it's like, they've had to. It's like we now sometimes when we'll blur it and we'll even add like the DOAC logo across and we'll censor it. Adding that in does something to your brain where it's like, that's naughty. Yeah. And it's like it sort of gets you. It gets different emotions for different people, but for a lot of people, it almost turns them a little bit childish. In a way, a little bit giddy. So you're sort of, again, it creates that trust. It's almost like, this person's swearing in front of me. And it's like, I want to see what else they say. So it creates that little bit of buzz and that little bit of excitement. But just by adding those asterisks, it gives the word even more weight, which is ironic because you want the idea is to do the opposite. You don't want it to have that weight, but by doing it, it does.
There's a lot of sound design intentionality you're doing here in terms of what you're cutting out.
Mm-hmm.
What you're adding suspense of. That's obvious. Like it might come obviously to you, but for that video in particular, it's like the shock of like, we're going to cut out everything and we're going to make this feel like an intentionally uncomfortable moment.
The beautiful thing about it was doing that brought the community together in a way that I hadn't seen for a while, where people was just having a good time in the comments, especially with dark, because we talk about a lot of dark topics as well. A lot of our stuff's very serious, and in moments, even in this trailer, we get serious about it. But every so often, when you can create a different tone and a different genre and a different feeling, it just allows your community to talk amongst each other. And like these people are saying, I was watching this in the office and my boss walked past just as she started screaming in an orgasm, and so many people were joking around with it and bantering it, and it's like it brought so many people together in that moment because they were reacting the same way Steve was, and they were given permission to react like that. But the good use of sound design again here, going back to Oz Perlman, is I think a great example of that, of how we used music to help the flow and dictate how you feel in that moment. So especially when we get to the card trick. So I even used Adobe Premiere's generative stretch out moment because I needed to last on Oz a little bit longer to last with the music, and I stretched out the music to create some tension. So I'll play this bit again.
Imagine that in front of you was an invisible deck of cards. Spread them out in front of you. And now you reach down and imagine you just grab a card at random. Now, look at it. Look at me. Okay, close your eyes. Hold your hand out, please. Now, before you open your eyes, tell us, what was that card?
3 of diamonds.
Open your eyes. Take a look. And it's not magic. I can teach you this. And these secrets, these habits, they're applicable all throughout life. So trust me, you don't want to miss the rest of this.
Okay, so I'll go into like the tiniest details that we've done for this through sound and also through visual. So you'll notice here, if you look around the frame, it's normal, right? There's nothing out of the ordinary here. Now, we're now going into, so this is where it's all normal. So let's do something fun. Can you see, if you look at Steve, can you see him getting a bit warped here?
Yeah.
Now, what the lens is doing, we added a zoom blur.
Zoom blur just on that one side, and it's just focusing on Oz. Yeah.
Yes. So now it's coming in from all angles. So if you look at Oz to the left, the mirror's even more, and it's sort of creating this warping zoom effect. So we've done that on purpose for two reasons. A, because we wanted it to feel like, okay, we're going into another dimension here. We're going into the world of magic. We're going into something different. And B, it draws your eyes to what I want it to draw to. This shot here, we purposely went for a split screen because we wanted to show the actions of both. Again, it shows the authenticity of it. Another justification with the detail is the text placement. So we've purposely put a card and at random here because your eye is now
you're going to be in between,
to that moment. Again, a tiny little moment. In the past, people might have put things around here or make it big screen because this is technically empty space. When we change the directional of the zoom blur, so it's literally in that moment, so everything else is blurred out. Look at it. Look at me. Close your eyes. So we've done a camera pan here. So it's almost like, again, that perfect imperfection of even the camera's like,
it seems active when it's actually not active.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool.
And it's playing with the music, so it's like, dun. So it has that timing for it. And again, part of that is like, how can we cram him saying, look at it, look at me, in time with the music? Because the music we're finding is stock music. It's not purposely made for us, so we have to make it work.
Actually, that's a great question I want to ask. You guys not intentionally using like a music bed or something like that to infiltrate? Like, you're using genuine stock, or are you using like a licensed stuff?
License. Sorry, yeah. So we use license just because we have to. Otherwise,
because the stock music, I was like, it's ridiculously bad. Like, you have to license stuff.
Yeah. So as you can sort of see the evolution of music through our trailers, where we started off with low budget, and then we've worked our way up.
And
to
also,
that
like, what's interesting is, like, do you have a framework for how you're choosing? I imagine also you're probably looping in different songs throughout based on what the moods you're wanting to do. Are you finding yourself most often using cinematic, like, orchestrated types of music, or are you finding yourself kind of blending in between different styles?
It varies, because the way we make trailers, and again, this goes down to this idea of the framework idea and what I call guidelines. The way we look at trailers is as a genre piece. So we take everything we know about the guest, about the research, about the conversation itself, and instead of making a DOAC trailer based on a framework, we're like, are we making a horror? Are we making a rom-com? Are we making a thriller? Are we making a conspiracy documentary? So we tie in moments of genres from this, and having that mindset means that the music that we find is to play towards that particular genre. And so when you have someone like John Kiriakou, who is one of the trailers I've got, we made him in almost like this Snowden conspiracy against the government vibe. So the sort of music you do there is very different to the Orgasm Queen with Susan, where we went for jazz, because jazz has those affiliations with rom-com and sex and passion. So those are the moments where we do it. And so ultimately, I can download up to about 50 to 60 music tracks, trying to find the perfect moments in those genre. And then it's ultimately then, how can we then find music track which then blends into the different emotional tones, still sticking within that music genre.
That's awesome. Okay, well, let's keep going.
And then, so we got Look at Me, and then this is the moment, one of my favorite little details from it, which is, we drew out the anticipation of whether we got it right.
What was that?
Which is based by this almost like grating noise from the violin, from the strings.
What was that card?
3 of diamonds.
Open your eyes. Take a look. And it's not magic.
And then when he goes back in, we go into the music. So I purposely elongated that violin string, because like the way I wanted to see it was almost like, I can just imagine a band and they're playing and they're waiting for it. And because Steve's so shocked by it all, the violins, they're like, do I just keep going here? And it's like elongating it. It makes it almost a tad uncomfortable. You cut to the close up of Earls and you just see the tiniest smile, because he knows what he's just done. And seeing like the look there from Steve was just like, fuck. And then that's when the music stops, is when he turns that card.
Hopefully there's people that are not just video editors in this process of doing this. So I think like you're detailing not only is like the art form of it, but the intentionality of things that no one else will really notice. Because the goal is every single thing you just described to me, you don't want to be an obvious thing. You don't want your trailer to say, wow, look at what they did in this trailer. It's like purely how can I enhance the story in a subtle way that no one else will actually recognize?
Yeah. It's out caring everyone else. And that's what Doak's done so well. It's like part of our mantra is that we are not the most talented. I put my hands up when I genuinely believe I'm nowhere near talented than most editors I've seen. Especially coming to LA, when you meet a lot of these editors, I know I'm out of my depth, right? What I am very confident in and where I know I shine is out caring so many people to the extent where I focus so much on those tiny details. And it's not something, like you say, it's not something that's specific to video editors. An amazing example of this is Disney Imagineering. And I watched a video a few weeks ago where they were laying out a new path at the Animal Kingdom. And as like what most theme parks do, they put stencils of like animal paw prints and like carriage track marks into the wet cement, so it creates a bit of ambience. The Imagineer spent about 5 minutes talking about a storyline between this clash between an animal and this cart, where a guy was just riding down the road and then a cheetah jumped out and there's a scuffle. And he's showing the camera, he's showing all these scuffle marks and these paw prints and things. And I'm watching it and I'm like, not many people will see this consciously. I might add. A lot of people will see it subconsciously, and a lot of people will see this stuff subconsciously. They don't know what they're seeing, they just know what they're feeling. And again, that's something that Disney Imagineering has done so well. They could have just done what most theme parks done, got stencils, done some animal prints leading the way. But the fact that he created a story of like, this is where a bit of conflict happened between this animal and this guy driving this car, and you can see the scruff marks there. It's like, as you're walking along, your brain will look at that and be like, oh, I'm in the real jungle here. I'm not in a multi-billion-pound theme park. So you don't have to be a video editor to do this stuff. It comes down to that intentionality and the justification. Every single element of this trailer, I can almost do a 20-minute TED talk, as you found out, about this sort of thing. The reason why the text is there, the why I've done the zoom, the why he flipped the card at a certain point, the why I've done the half smile, all of those things are intentional acts. And the lesson here is, if you take a step back from any work that you're doing and think about, how can I make this 1% better, or does this need to be here, or what can I do to make this add a little bit more substance, a little bit more thought behind it, it will do wonders for your work. So let's go for another person, which let's go for Vanessa Van Edwards.
Your brain is 12.5 times more likely to believe my gesture over my words. And that's because it is very hard to lie with our gestures. For example, you want to do a little experiment with me?
Sure.
Okay, I want you to say 5, but hold up the number 3.
5.
Hard, right?
Yeah, I had to think about them separately.
This is why liars use less gestures. But knowing a tool like that is critical if you're trying to set yourself up for success.
And we're going to go through all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Vanessa Van Edwards is a behavioral...
The reason why I show this one is, again, these are all very different types of hooks. And again, it sets up the guest in slightly different ways. So with Vanessa Van Edwards, the impression I got from her is she is very like energetic. She loves the room. She's like kooky in that way. And that's sort of justified at the end where she's like, oh yeah. Like no one's ever done that in the history of a CEO. So what we wanted to do is, again, that music. again, it's fun. It has elements of that hip hop little beat of it, and so it's sort of like, oh, I can enjoy this. It's matching her tone. If we went for something like neoclassical or something quite atmospheric, which you could do because we're talking about lying, which is a very serious topic, but the fact that we made it more lighthearted means that it's like, okay, I feel like I'm not only am I going to watch this and learn stuff, I'm going to have a bit of fun with this person, and because her energy is like that. The second most important part of this is the idea of interaction with the guest. So we made the hook be an interactive activity between her and Steve doing it. The reason why we done that was because we wanted audience members, whilst they're watching it or soon after, to be like, I'm going to try it. Because what I noticed was when she got recorded, everyone in the office was doing the same thing. That was the first thing they'd done. They were all trying to see if they could do it. And then they were spent ages talking about it afterwards, whether they achieved it or whether they didn't do it. And again, it's bringing in that community of that interaction, because if you can get a guest to make someone actually do something there and then doing it, imagine what else you can learn when you listen to this 2-hour podcast from someone. And so that's why we brought in that element of it to make it engaging in that sense, that there's that interaction.
And you have the buzzword of liar, you have the buzzword of like, you have additional things here if you're like, okay, these will be hook aspects of stuff that they're communicating, but tying in the lying as a legitimate element of that is really, really cool.
100%. And again, this is why the guest is so important with the 50%. Vanessa Van Edwards, I'd never heard of her before. We now call her a bit of a unicorn because she'd done wonders for us. She'd done amazing views. So many people interacted with it and loved that episode. And why she was so great and why that 50% is so important is because that opening line there, your brain is 12.5 times more likely to believe. So instantly we're starting off with not only a moment of value, a little bit of data buyer there, but it's the terminology she's using, the 12.5. It's such a specific number that you go, this must be true. Yeah. And again, this is a psychological hack that people do, is why when Stephen wrote the 33 laws, he could have done 30 laws, but more people are more likely to be engaged with 33 laws because it's this idea of like, oh, it's so specific. And again, it's relatable, right? People lie, people want to spot a liar. And so by bringing that in, it's like, okay, within, how long is that? So within 20 seconds, we've established that not only are we going to be able to tell who's a liar, we're also going to be able to see if we can lie. We're also going to know about all these other tools that's critical to set you up for success. So in 20 seconds, we've basically sold who she is, what she achieves, and what we're going to learn from it in the 20 seconds.
What's important about the rest of this from a story arc perspective?
So this one, we can focus about the whole thing as a narrative arc and why narrative is so important.
You can't be afraid to verbalize your ignorance. That's holding you back.
Give me an example.
I can give you several. Like investing. Like, you're telling me that if I put this money in here right now, I get 30x, 20x. What the It's a scam. I know a scam when I see one. Go find you another idiot, because it ain't happening over here, buddy. But when you go and you say, I don't know what that means. How does investing really work? I don't know where to get it. Now you're a part of the right conversations. You're a part of the right opportunities, but you get there by being the dummy in the room. And now look at what I'm able to do.
I love it! Kevin, it took 13 years from where you did your first stand-up to you having your moment, but why didn't you quit?
Because of the lessons that my mom gave from being very scarred from my brother. So let's go back. I grew up in North Philadelphia. My brother sold the drugs. My dad was always in jail, out of jail, and my mom wasn't gonna let that happen with me. So we had an agreement. I had a certain amount of time to make comedy work. And in my mind, it wasn't gonna be hard because there was no other option. I will figure it out. So I was driving from Philadelphia to New York every day. I wasn't coming home until 4 a.m. I was doing 25 to 28 sets a weekend. I worked that for a very, very long time. And the struggle left you with days of, what am I doing? Can I pay my rent? this, man. But my mom's biggest lesson was you're not quitting. And not many people are going to do the 13 years of hard shit. Most people opt out at year 2 and want to go find a quick return. When you keep quitting to start something else that you think is the idea, it's just a cycle. You're never completing anything. You got to make a choice of the thing you're going to do and finish. I made the choice that stand-up comedy was what I was going to finish. Because if I focused and did it well, that would open up the doors for me to do everything else that I want to do.
But they say that you can't have everything in life. So what is the cost? Have you struggled with your mental health? And what advice have you got for young men in terms of like what it takes to be a good man?
That's a weird thing that's happening where the definition of a good man is so foggy. It seems that in this time today, more men are being forward, wanting to express and talk, but the fear of being judged after.
Do you have that fear?
So, what is the total length of that?
That is a long one. That's 2 minutes and 17 seconds.
Okay. There's a lot you're doing from a visual perspective, which, obviously, if you're coming from an editor background, seems like is so easy to understand. I think what's really interesting is how conversational and simple the hook is versus how cinematic and retention editing hacky the rest of the video is. Is that an intentional choice? Do you feel like, is that a forced thing? Like, are you saying like, okay, in order to storytell this effectively, we can't stay here. We have to really add so many other visuals from a B-roll perspective to make this like actually punch?
So the first thinking with this was, how can we make people relate to Kevin Hart? Kevin Hart has lived a life that not many people will live. And so how can we make someone like Kevin so relatable that we can take lessons from him and implement it into our own lives? It's just no different to what we do with experts. And so the way we started this was we wanted to start with this investment chat because A, it includes comedy, which is what Kevin Hart is well known for. B, it shows that he's got this business mind going on. He's talking more than just about his life. And C, by making it more conversational, it's almost like he's opening up to talk about everything, making that sort of that conversational bit that's a bit frantic. It replicates him as a character. He's not someone who says things sharp, dun, dun, dun. He is someone who'll say something and then he'll come out and say some sort of sarcastic comment straight after, and then he'll start laughing, and then he'll interact with someone. That's his character. And so we wanted to replicate that within the hook, but also offer something that's more than just, this is Kevin's story that you might not be able to relate to in some sense. And so that's why we sort of started with this more conversational, longer investment
one
piece.
One of my favorite elements of this was the tiny choice to do like the 7 Kevins when he was like,
I can give you several.
Yeah. That was like such a cool intentional choice. All the other variations being blurred, the main one maintaining the same thing, and then I love that. You don't even have 7, but like the idea that it's there is like,
really, and then for
through.
portrait we've done it the other way, so it flips to the portrait.
And I love the intentional choice to go into first off, your aspect ratio changing in there, which that's a cinematic pull
because he's a Hollywood actor. So we've done the same with Matthew McConaughey.
Very cool.
It's like, again,
very cool.
It's all about showcasing the guests for who they are. And so, but then we come back because obviously people probably don't really want to watch much of a YouTube video in that style. They probably want it to open up. That's just the way it is. Again, we established
the intentional rotoscope there. I want to call that out. There's an intentional rotoscope and an intentional blur that you're doing there, which is so cool.
And we had the warp. We've added a warp to the footage as well to make it feel like it's surrounding them in the studio. So it feels like it's there in the room with them. We added in like scan marks and slightly pixelated it to make it feel like it's old archive footage because he's been doing this for so long, right? We've not really focused too much on him becoming successful, more about the journey up and then the journey down, because the moment of success where you would think most people would want to know about Kevin Hart is like the successful side, but not many people can actually relate to that because not many people are in that world. What people can relate to is the struggles to achieve something and the come down from that. So that's been the main focus of this narrative arc. So then it's sort of told through because of the lessons my mum gave me, who cannot relate to their mum, and like the lessons that you get from like your elders that comes from you. The fact that his entire career and his success started from the lessons he got from his mum is so relatable, and it's something that we can all do straight away. We can talk to our granddad, our parents, and be like, life advice they've done through it.
There was one part where you had a really cool thing where you used him reacting and saying the 3 different things, but you looped it in very different moments.
A few were days of, what am I doing? Can I pay my rent? This, man. But
those feel like very different contexts, which I'm guessing it's like he said this pretty much back to back.
Yeah. So the idea is almost like his head is a bit frazzled at this moment in time. So it can sort of be like, because it's times of doing this, like I was over here thinking this, then I was over here thinking this.
And you're using different camera angles too to kind of use that to make it feel like it's a different B-roll shot. Yeah,
exactly. So it's almost like it's just constantly following, no matter where he is in the room, no matter what angle. These are the thoughts that he's got. It's basically to replicate the brain. And so when here, the quitting, we wanted to make the quitting nice and big because it's like a big, powerful word.
Yeah,
that's why we cropped in there, because the focus now is just that word and almost like the Kevin's face.
Which, if you use this for any length of time beyond that half of a second, it would look awful. But because you're using it for an emphasis of a point,
of a point and cut to a beat.
Yeah,
it had to cut to the beat. It had to work with the sound design. So I had to play around with the music to make sure it landed in that moment, so the whole thing can land together. And then again here, we sort of add the slow movement here. So it's almost like the journey is starting to begin. He's going down that path. And then here...
I love this. That was so cool.
These are the elements of Kevin that we know.
And then you expand to that main shot being the center one, which is like him now. That's him in the current state.
Yeah. So it's like in these moments, because it's building up, you don't see much of audience. You don't see much of
success
where he is. Yes, it's like purposely old footage, going a little bit sharper and sharper, more cinematic, and we wanted to showcase as much of his life as possible. So it's special for him, but it's also special for people who know him. So we've got the moments of him like in his earliest films. We got him doing his first stand-ups, and then it all leads up to what he was promoting, which was this Netflix comedy special. And then when it opens up, he's in an arena. Yeah. And that's the visualizer of that. You've seen it. And then we have our heart. Then we have our conflict.
That's to connect the 13 years. That's the 13 years of...
That's the 13 years of hardship. And then ultimately, as like with every hero's journey...
Saying that you can't have everything in life.
So cut to gray.
The zoom blur comes back in.
Despite all the success that's happening... You're still experiencing this thing.
Yeah, it's never, you can climb the highest mountain, but you still sometimes come down. And then we actually ended it with this idea of him struggling and the idea of what it means to be a good man. Again, because it was like, if you're a young person watching this, because you're a fan of Kevin Hart, you're also going to learn something more just about life, but also what it takes to be, in his eyes, a good man. And especially because the world that we live in now, where we do have an epidemic of lonely men, for example, and people struggling with identity, it's like, okay, you're also going to learn about this stuff. And then we end on the final shot where he's pondering quite a deep
question. And what's
question.
that, when you talk about that framework of saying the C, you were talking about the A arc, B arc, and the C arc, and then you don't promise the C. What do you mean by that? So like, what's an example of this right here?
So the C is the cliffhanger. So we've got our A and B. So in the purest sense, A is the rise. So this is him doing his hard graft, working up. He almost gives up. There's turmoil there, but his mum says, don't give up. You're not quitting this. So he's reaching bit. And then B is almost like, oh, now it's the come down. This is the conflict that's happening here. This is the problem that we're going to be facing. Not everyone's ride is smooth sailing. So then we're slowly leading to C, which is the hope, which is about young men and struggling and mental health.
So say that again. A
is the rise.
B is the conflict.
B is sort of, it's the conflict. It's the come down.
It's whatever the come down, but it's like whatever. It's the friction point.
It's the friction point. It's the change. It's the change in the motion. It's the change in how we're feeling. The change of the career. Yeah. So for an expert, it could be a change of topic.
Yeah.
So it's in essence, it's almost like, as long as they fluidity. The reason why I say ABC is because they conjoin together, right? It feels like A, C, F. Then it's like they're the different clips that traditionally how trailers were made were just put together. We put it ABC because they need to flow into each other. Yeah. So even with going into B, which is like success can only take you so far, whatever it is, and then going into young men, the bridge there is like this idea of like hard work and building that success, that's something that a lot of young men are struggling with right now. So that's the come down. So it's not necessarily focused on his come down, but the come down of society and the problem that we've got with society. So that's our drop there, which then C is leading into what is supposedly what you would think would be the end of whatever the trailer's trying to say. And in this sense, it's Steve asking about struggles.
Being judged after.
Do you have that fear?
So this is C here, this dark space. We've just erased that accidentally.
So in there, is that an intentional place where you're putting, are you intentionally put that at the end of the pod? Because I imagine if you have that C or whatever that question is, and you reveal that too early, if that happens in the first 30 to 45 minutes of the podcast, then people feel like, okay, I received my cliffhanger. I've gotten my satisfaction of whatever that gap was.
Usually, yeah. There's a few... there's a few ways it can work. Sometimes it adds benefit because you can get that payoff straight away, for example. And what the hope is there is actually you've created enough intrigue in other areas and other topics. So it's like, okay, but I still want to know the answer to this, and this. But you're right. The other option is this came at the end of the trailer anyways, at the end of the episode. So then you'd have to then watch the other 2 hours to get to that point. Ultimately, what we need to do with a trailer is more than just that final moment. That's arguably one of the most important because that's the last thing people will hear and see. But in the hope that we've also established there's elements of what we need to know are in this episode somewhere. So even if the answer is answered for the final moment relatively sooner, we still have a whole bank of topics that was mentioned in the trailer that need to be explored that haven't yet.
Identify the gap for me. What's the easiest win that I can implement in my next podcast? This podcast that comes out, what's the next immediate win that I could take from what you're talking about and say like, okay, anybody has the access to be able to do this and implement this in their trailers?
Focus on the details and the justification. So what you could do, for example, your idea of showcasing this is a detail. This is an element that you've not really done before. And then the way you're going to edit it, where you pull it on a screen behind it, instantly allows people to gain that knowledge and to go through it further, right? That is something that you've implemented into this episode, which hopefully will help so many people because they can visually see what we're talking about in that moment and they can go on the journey with us. And that's a detail. Some people won't do that. Some people will just have it as it is now, and then they will just hope that people are listening and playing along with it. Or they might even just throw the trailer up there on its own. But the fact that we've recorded it and we're going through the editor, so when we
emphasize the differences. So, like for example, if you have a prop, there's situations where you showed us a couple examples where either it's her reacting and it wasn't the sex toys, or it's him talking about the card. Right? It's like, I'm going to show you this level of visual. I can promise you that you're going to have this physical example of this.
Yeah, and the beauty about details and justification is you don't need to go to film school to know how to put details in. You just need to take that step back and reflect and be like, what can I do to just make this even better for my audience? Even if it's just the tiniest thing, just the 1% that you start off with, and then it grows and grows and grows and it compounds. What can I do to really help the audience in this moment? And that's a detail that you can do in it can be through text, it can be through the captions, it can be through the music, it can be through pops, it can be through reactions, it can be like helping them on that journey, it could be through spoon feeding. There's so many elements you can do, but just having the mindset of caring so much and focusing on the details. Do not neglect it. Do not think we've recorded this now, it's fine, we'll just pull it out there. Really hone in on it and care about it.
The last question I want to ask you: does Diary of a CEO use AI in this process?
Diary of a CEO uses AI in a lot of the process. Every single since we could, AI has been used in some element of every single trailer that
including
we do.
hook identification and everything. Like in terms of like, would you take a transcript and say, okay, help me identify these thoughts processes, or in what?
We've not done that yet because we're struggling with that with AI. We don't quite. There's a few things with AI. So we've run tests and we've experimented with almost like giving it a transcript and be like, write a script for me based on this, and it's never quite got there yet.
Yeah.
Not to say it won't. And there's a huge chance that it will in the future, but it's not quite there. It's missing, ironically, it's missing the details, and it's missing the bridge into the different topics and understanding that narrative journey. And so where we use AI as a best friend. So we'll use it for intros, we'll use it in voiceovers, we'll use it in our B-roll, we'll use it to up the production quality that we could never do without AI. So we use it in that sense. We're not quite yet at the stage where it's almost like dictating how we make the trailer.
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you. I think the thing that I've learned in this, that hopefully everyone else has learned as well, something that we kind of covered, but we've been wrapping around, is one of the most important aspects of this is identifying conviction. That's something that AI can't do right now, but understanding the moments of suspense, the moments of reaction, the details of those things that emphasize the actual like cinema of it, where it's beyond just like people interacting, but you take in the moments where you're like, whoa. It's like you're feeling it. I love how you've incorporated that to add so much depth. And then on top of that, I haven't realized how much goes into the blurs and the edit choices, because my mind obviously is just like, I'm so basic. I'm like thinking first in captions, and I'm like, here are fonts, and here's colors, and here's this, here's placement, and I'm able to grab all that very easily. But like what you're talking about is at a different level of production that I think is going to feel insurmountable to people, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, we're not going to be able to incorporate that level of B-roll or rotoscoping, or I'm not going to be able to train my editor to do that. I think the thing that's important is not about those details necessarily, like that's super helpful, but what actually got me gripped wasn't those sections. It was your ability to say like, this is the part I want to highlight.
100%. And look, everything I've learned is come from watching films and TV shows. Where I learned about cliffhangers was from Australian reality TV shows. Where I've learned about sound design and music is through John Williams and Disney. So these are like manuals and lessons that anyone can learn, and we probably are already learning it. The difference with me is I've actively pursued those memories and that nostalgia and what I've grown up watching, and I've just put it into practice. So like you say, it's like some of these things aren't about the tiny editing decisions that people might think, oh, I can't do that, I'm not as evolved as an editor to sort of do those tiny little moments in the time that we're doing. But anyone can read a book about human psychology and understand about buying behaviors that people have. Loads of people can watch music videos and realize how much certain types of music is brought in through different moments and how it works and how you can cut to the beat. So many people can watch a Disney film and follow the story arc that Disney do. In fact, Pixar have released like their framework for telling a story in their eyes. And so all of these things you can do, you can learn. You don't need to pay a lot of money to do it. You just have to be really curious and open and expand your horizons of where you're pulling in all of this inspiration. Like I said, Australian TV shows, Guy Ritchie, Disney. I watched my first horror film by mistake when I was like 5-6 years old, and that stayed with me for the rest of my life. That's why I'm so ingripped with horror. And I also watched so many B movies and shocking films, and I've learned most by watching like horrific B movies, because they sort of tell you not what to do, because you notice when things aren't right, and then you go, well, what would I have done to make it right? And then that's when you compare Sharknado to Jaws, and you realize, oh, what Steven Spielberg done on like a little budget where the shark kept breaking down, and what they done on Sharknado are polar opposites. And yet with Spielberg, I'm terrified. With Sharknado, I'm laughing. And so you're sort of learning from those moments. It's not like a specific lesson course of like how you do this stuff. It's bringing in all of these elements from so many different people that eventually creates your style and your voice and how you can implement it into your work no matter what you're doing.
And I think something that you guys get credit for in the industry, but should be known for, like I want to say on this podcast, is I think you've created this asset that people, it's almost a standard of people want to be associated with it. They want to repost it. They want to collaborate with it because of what it stands for. And it's very similar to, like, for example, like going on the Tonight Show. Everyone wants to post that they're going on that. It's an event. It's a status symbol. And I think somehow a trailer has become a status symbol, which is insane. That's like that's what people are like, I want to share this because I want the association of it because of the level of art it's attached to. And so I just want to say, like, I mean, I'm kind of in awe of all the details because I think, like, again, like, I'm someone that's in this. I'm in the game. I feel like I thought I was in the game at a high level. So I'm like, it's awesome to see that the things that you're perfecting and that you've perfected, I don't know. It's like there's almost this like autist level of like genius that has to go in it because like it really is crazy the scale to which you guys are doing this, the pace at which you guys are doing this, because it's not like you're getting 2 weeks and you're saying, sweet, I'm going to turn this out. It's like, no, we have to get this from, we have to get this from one team. It has to come from this other team. We have to like pull this all together. That's, I don't know. I'm just really impressed. And I encourage anybody to follow you and connect with you and learn how to do this. Cause I wish more people had this at scale at the same time. I don't think anybody would be able to compete with you at the same level. So it's like as much as I'd want people to be like, yeah, just go do it. It's like at the same time, like I hope what comes through is your level of genius in it.
And I mean, the reality of it is, firstly, thank you so much. But the reality of it is anyone can become it, because I'm nowhere near the level I want to be at yet. And so the reality of it is this is stuff people can learn because I learned it because I'm self-taught. And so hopefully that's part of the journey that I'm on now, especially with socials, is to try and give as much information as possible. So hopefully people will be able to just focus to do all of those elements as well and make me absolutely redundant.
You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
you,
you,
dude.